This is the story of a king who loved music more than power.
Welcome to African Ruth Stories, where we share the rich cultural heritage of Africa.
They say a broken heart can cry, but in the kingdom of Zamani, a broken heart could sing. And no one sang pain more beautifully than the king. He was the only ruler who danced with barefoot children in the rain, the only king whose nights belonged more to drums than to gold, and the only man who gave his heart to one woman so completely that when she betrayed him, even the moon seemed to stop listening to music. But this was not a story of war. This was a story of rhythm, of love dressed like light, of jealousy hidden behind a smile, of a woman who kissed a king while doubting him, of another woman who smiled like a sister while planting poison in silence, and of a revenge so beautiful, so soft, so unforgettable, that the same people who came to witness a heartbreak stayed to hear the greatest love story ever sung beneath the African sky. So if you think you know what betrayal looks like, stay. Because by the end of this story, you may discover that the deepest revenge is not to destroy the one who hurt you, but to rise so beautifully that their own shadow can no longer follow you. In the sun-washed kingdom of Zamani, where wide grasslands shimmered like flowing gold, and the wind moved through acacia trees like whispered blessings, there lived a king named Jabari. He was young, handsome, and admired across the land. But people did not love him only because he wore a crown. They loved him because he was different. Some kings measured wealth in ivory halls, polished thrones, and rare jewels. Jabari measured life in sound. He loved the pulse of hand drums at dusk. He loved the gentle call of river flutes in the early morning. He loved the laughter of village girls spinning in circles during harvest festivals. He loved watching old men clap slowly to songs they had known since childhood. He loved dance, not because it entertained him, but because it made him feel that a kingdom was alive. When the moon rose over Zamani, Jabari would leave the royal chamber, remove his sandals, and walk into the great courtyard where musicians gathered. There, with princes, farmers, market boys, and wandering singers around him, the king would dance. Not like a man showing power, but like a man surrendering to joy. His people used to say, "When our king dances, the land forgets its sorrow." Yet deep inside that bright and musical heart, there was an emptiness no celebration could fill. Because when the drumming ended, when the dancers rested, when the stars grew quiet, King Jabari was alone. Many women admired him. Many noble families dreamed of joining their bloodline to his. But Jabari did not want admiration. He wanted tenderness. He wanted someone who would hear the man beneath the music, someone who would love him when no one was watching, someone whose eyes would rest on his soul, not on his throne. And fate, with all its sweetness and cruelty, was already leading such a woman toward him. Her name was Nia, and she did not know yet that one dance would change her whole life. Each year, Zamani held the festival of first rain, a celebration so beautiful that travelers crossed rivers and deserts just to witness it. The women wore fabrics bright as sunrise. The men painted their robes with patterns that looked like moving fire. Children ran with flower crowns in their hair. And when the drums began, even the oldest hearts remembered how to feel young. That year, The festival arrived after a long, dry season. When the first evening clouds gathered and the smell of rain touched the earth, the whole kingdom came alive. Jabari stood among his people in royal cloth the color of midnight blue, silver beads at his wrists, sunlight still resting on his skin. Musicians surrounded the courtyard, and one by one, the dancers began to move. They were graceful, they were lively, they were gifted. But none of them prepared him for her. Nia entered the circle without arrogance. She wore amber and deep red, colors that looked like sunset melting into the earth. Around her ankles were tiny bells that answered the drums with their own sweet language. Her hair was braided with beads that clicked softly as she turned. Then she danced, not for attention, not for applause. She danced like the music belonged to her before it reached anyone else. The first movement made Jabari straighten. The second made him forget to breathe. And by the third, he was no longer watching a performer. He was witnessing a soul. Nia's dance was not loud, yet it filled everything. It carried laughter and sorrow together. It carried softness and strength. It carried the kind of beauty that does not beg to be seen. It simply becomes impossible to ignore. When she lifted her face toward the sky, rain finally began to fall. The crowd cheered, calling it a blessing, and Jabari, standing still in the middle of all that joy, felt something happen to his heart that no poet had ever fully explained. After the dance, while the people celebrated the rain, Nia stepped away from the crowd to rest beneath a baobab tree. Jabari followed, though not as a king, as a man. "You dance," he said, his voice quiet, "as if the sky has trusted you with its secrets." Nia looked at him, surprised, not because of who he was, but because no one had ever described her that way. "And you speak," she replied gently, "as if music has taught you how to be kind." Jabari smiled. In that moment, the rain softened, the festival faded, and something rare began. Not a performance, not a rumor, a beginning. From that night onward, Jabari found reasons to leave the palace more often. Some evenings, he visited the village where Nia lived with her aunt, a respected textile artist known for weaving stories into cloth. Other nights, he invited musicians to the palace gardens, hoping Nia would come with them. She did, and little by little, Zamani's king and the dancer of the rain began to know each other. Jabari learned that Nia loved melodies the way some people love prayer. She collected songs from old women, market vendors, shepherd boys, and passing travelers. She believed every voice carried a memory, and every memory deserved rhythm. Nia learned that Jabari wrote secret lyrics at night. He had never shown them to anyone because he feared they were too tender for a king. But Nia listened as he sang softly beneath the stars, and she did not laugh. She closed her eyes, and when he finished, she whispered, "You do not sing like a ruler. You sing like someone who has been waiting to be understood." Their closeness deepened not with grand gestures, but with beautiful small things. They walked beside the river while dawn painted gold over the water. They listened to old drummers speak of rhythm as if it were medicine. They danced in empty courtyards when everyone else had gone to sleep. They shared roasted fruit, private jokes, unfinished songs, and the silent comfort of simply sitting near each other. Soon, the palace staff began to notice that the king smiled differently now. He no longer looked at evenings as something to survive. He looked at them as something that might bring her. And the people of Zamani, who had long wished for their music-loving king to find true love, began whispering with hope. "She is the one," they said. "She hears his heart." Even the elders, who were cautious by nature, softened toward Nia. She was not greedy. She was not proud. She was not dazzled by royal life. If anything, she seemed almost shy before it. And that made Jabari love her more. There were nights when they danced alone in the moonlit garden while no drum played at all. Only the rhythm of their steps, the breath between them, and the soft night wind moving through jasmine vines. On one such night, Jabari took Nia's hand and said, "If love had a sound, I think mine began the night I heard your ankle bells answer the rain." Nia smiled, but her eyes turned wet. "Then promise me," she whispered, "that if life ever grows dark, you will not let silence replace what music made between us." He kissed her forehead. "I promise." But somewhere behind palace curtains, another pair of eyes had already begun to watch them. And not with love. Her name was Amara. She was graceful, intelligent, and raised within the palace since girlhood. Her mother had once served the queen, and her family believed, though no promise had ever truly been made, that one day Amara would stand beside Jabari in royal honor. Amara knew how to speak softly in court, how to smile at the right moment, how to make elders feel respected, how to wear silk as if she had been born in it. And for years, she had imagined a future in which the king eventually saw her devotion and chose her. But love does not arrive according to old expectations. Love chooses without asking pride for permission. When Nia entered Jabari's heart, Amara felt something sharp awaken within her. At first, she dismissed it. A passing disappointment. A moment of wounded hope. But as the weeks passed and the palace filled with talk of Nia's beauty, Nia's gentleness, Nia's music, Nia's dance, Amara's disappointment became envy. And envy, when fed in silence, grows elegant. She never shouted. She never insulted Nia openly. She never showed bitterness before others. Instead, she became sweeter, kinder, more attentive. She approached Nia with warm words and sister-like concern. She complimented her style. She praised her dancing. She offered help navigating palace customs. And because Nia's heart was pure, she accepted that kindness as truth. That is how betrayal often enters. Not through the door that looks dangerous, but through the door decorated like affection. Amara began spending time with Nia in the afternoons, often speaking gently about life inside the palace. "Royal love," she once said while braiding gold thread through a ceremonial cloth, "is rarely simple." Nia looked up. "What do you mean?" Amara lowered her eyes, careful, almost reluctant. "I only mean that crowns create duties. Sometimes a king belongs not only to his heart, but to tradition, to alliances, to the expectations of many people." Nia felt a flicker of discomfort, but Amara smiled and changed the subject so gracefully that the unease remained small. The next day, it grew a little larger, then larger still. A whispered thought here, a doubtful remark there. A soft sigh placed exactly where it would linger longest. Amara never accused Jabari directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she planted possibilities. And possibilities are more dangerous than lies when the heart is in love. Because a lie can be denied. But a fear? A fear learns how to echo. One morning, Nia received a folded piece of paper outside her chamber. No name, no seal. Only a line written in elegant script. A heart inside a palace, should never trust what smiles in public. She frowned, thinking it some foolish game. But later that day, she received another. This one claimed that royal elders had begun discussing a more suitable future bride for the king. Another suggested that Jabari's tenderness was real, but temporary. Another hinted that kings often love with music and marry with duty. Each message was crafted with cruel precision, not wild enough to be unbelievable, not direct enough to be easily challenged, just enough to disturb peace. Nia tried to ignore them. She truly tried. But once doubt enters a loving mind, it begins turning ordinary moments into questions. When Jabari arrived late to a riverside meeting because of council matters, she wondered whom he had been with. When he smiled distractedly at a ceremony, she wondered what hidden burden he carried. When elders greeted her politely but cautiously, she wondered if they already knew she did not belong. And Amara, patient as a shadow, kept feeding the storm. "I shouldn't say this," Amara murmured one afternoon. "But I once heard a court advisor mention that the kingdom expects the queen to come from established lineage. Perhaps it means nothing. I only worry because I care for you. Because I care for you." Those were the words that always came wrapped around poison. Nia's sleep began to change. Her songs lost brightness. Her dancing, though still beautiful, now carried hesitation. Even Jabari noticed. "You move," he told her one evening, "like someone whose heart is listening for danger." She tried to smile. But love, no matter how patient, can feel when distance has entered the room. Soon, Nia began asking questions she did not truly want answered. "Would you still love me?" she asked once, "if your people disapproved?" Jabari looked startled. "Why would you ask that?" "Because sometimes love is strong in private and weak in the face of the world." He took both her hands. "My love is not a visitor, Nia. It does not come only when the moon is soft and leave when morning becomes difficult." His words should have healed her, but a mind already injured by doubt does not always know how to receive comfort. And so, even while longing to believe him, she began to fear the very thing that had once given her joy. Music. Because now, every sweet word sounded like something that could one day be taken away. The palace announced a grand evening called the Moon of Promise, a celebration where the king would perform a new song before elders, nobles, and citizens. It was a beloved tradition in Zamani, and that year, everyone believed the song would honor Nia. Even Nia thought so. Until Amara came to her just before sunset, carrying one final cruelty. In her hand was a page torn from what looked like a royal song journal. On it were lines suggesting that the king's public performance would honor the future queen chosen for balance, tradition, and royal peace. No name appeared, but the meaning struck Nia like cold water. Amara gave a sad little sigh. "Perhaps it is not what it seems, but if I were you, I would guard my heart before the whole kingdom watches it break." That night, the courtyard glowed with lamps. The musicians sat ready. The air smelled of sandalwood and rain-soaked earth. Jabari stood before the gathering in white and gold, radiant and sincere, with a song in his chest that he had written for only one person, Nia. He searched for her in the crowd and found her at the edge of the lantern light, beautiful and still, but distant. The drums began softly. The flute rose, and Jabari sang. He sang of rain answering dance, of a soul recognized in a single glance, of love that turned a king into a man grateful enough to kneel before tenderness. It was breathtaking. It was unmistakably about her. The crowd felt it. The elders felt it. The night itself seemed to lean closer. But Nia, already wounded by lies, heard not devotion, only performance. When he reached for her hand before the people, she stepped back. A silence swept through the courtyard. Jabari's expression changed, not to anger, but to confusion. "Nia?" he said softly. Her voice trembled, yet she forced it to remain steady. "I cannot stand inside a song," she said, "if I do not know whether the truth survives after the music ends." Whispers rippled across the crowd. Jabari's face paled. "I have never lied to you." "Perhaps not with words," she said, tears threatening her eyes. "But maybe with hope." Then, before the entire kingdom, she turned away. No scream, no scene, no shattered object. Only a quiet departure that hurt more because of its dignity. Jabari did not stop her. Not because he did not want to, but because heartbreak, when it arrives in front of many eyes, can leave even a king too stunned to speak. That night, no one danced. The musicians sat with lowered heads. The lanterns burned low. And in the center of all that unfinished beauty stood the dancing king, motionless. As if someone had taught sorrow how to wear a crown. After Nia left, Zamani changed. The palace grew quieter. The courtyard performances became rare. Jabari still ruled wisely, still greeted his people, still listened to elders and settled disputes with fairness. But the brightness that once moved through him like sunlight through water had dimmed. He no longer danced for joy. He danced to survive. Sometimes, late at night, musicians heard footsteps in the empty courtyard and found the king alone, moving slowly beneath the moon. Not with celebration, with ache. He would turn once, pause, lift his hands toward the stars, and let his body say what his mouth could not. That he missed her. That he did not understand. That love had touched him like a blessing and left him like a question. But pain, when held honestly, can become art. And Jabari, though wounded, refused to let bitterness turn his heart ugly. Instead, he poured his grief into music. He wrote song after song, not songs of hatred, but of longing, confusion, devotion, and the strange beauty of having loved deeply, even if it ended. The people began gathering quietly beyond the palace walls, just to hear him rehearse. Some wept. Some held each other's hands. Some whispered, "A man who loves like this does not know how to deceive." Among those who heard the songs was Baba Kito, an elderly court drummer who had served 3 generations of royalty. He was wise, observant, and slow to speak, the kind of man who noticed what others missed. He had seen Amara's watchful eyes. He had seen unsigned notes carried by servants who never asked questions. He had seen Nia's spirit fade in ways that love alone could not explain. So Baba Kito began listening more carefully. And as the days passed, truth began revealing itself like dawn through fog. A young palace maid admitted she had delivered secret papers at Amara's request. A scribe recognized royal phrasing copied from private archives. A ribbon tied around one message matched fabric kept only in Amara's chambers. Piece by piece, the lie unraveled. And when Baba Kito finally brought the evidence to Jabari, the king sat in silence for a long time. He did not shout. He did not strike the table. He did not call for rage. He simply closed his eyes, as if heartbreak had just opened a second wound beneath the first. So she doubted me, he whispered, because someone taught fear how to speak in my name. Babakito bowed his head. Yes, my king. Jabari looked toward the empty courtyard where he and Naya had once danced barefoot under jasmine vines. And the sadness in his face was so deep that even the old drummer could not hold back tears. Then, at last, Jabari rose. What Amara planted with whispers, he said, will not be answered with cruelty. It will be answered with truth. And that truth would become his revenge. Jabari announced a new royal celebration called the Night of Honest Songs. Messengers spread the word across Zamani. Every village was invited. Every musician was welcome. Every citizen who had ever loved, lost, hoped, or regretted was asked to gather beneath the moon. Amara was invited too. She came dressed in beauty and confidence, believing perhaps that the king had moved on, or that if he had discovered anything, it could still be managed with charm. Nia, living quietly with relatives near the riverlands, also heard of the celebration. Something in her spirit stirred. She could not explain it, but she returned to Zamani that evening, hidden beneath a simple shawl. The courtyard blazed with golden light. The drums were deep. The flutes trembled like memory. And when the king appeared, dressed not in heavy royal splendor, but in flowing earth-toned cloth, he looked less like a ruler and more like the voice of the kingdom itself. He raised his hand, and the music softened. Tonight, he said, we do not gather to witness perfection. We gather to honor truth. Because love without truth is only a decorated wound. The crowd fell silent. Then Jabari began his final performance. It was unlike anything Zamani had ever seen. Dancers entered first, women in amber, men in deep blue, children in white, moving in circles that told a story without words. A man loved a woman loved him back. A shadow entered smiling. Fear was planted. Trust broke. Regret bloomed. The choreography was elegant, emotional, unmistakable. Then the singers joined. And through layered voices, the story unfolded in song. Not naming names, not accusing directly, but revealing everything. A borrowed whisper. A false letter. A jealous heart disguised as concern. Do not switch speakers. Use one consistent narrator voice throughout. A lover who believed fear more quickly than devotion. A king who answered pain not with punishment, but with honesty so bright that lies could not breathe inside it. As the performance deepened, the crowd began to understand. Eyes turned toward Amara. Her face tightened. Her calm cracked. And when one final verse described the hand that braided poison into sisterhood, Amara could bear no more. Enough! She cried. The music stopped. Thousands of eyes fell upon her. Her breathing shook. Her lips trembled. Pride, that old polished armor, finally shattered. Yes, she said, voice breaking. Yes, I did it. I gave doubt a voice. I wanted her to leave. I wanted him to feel what it was like to be denied. I wanted love to fail because it had not chosen me. The crowd gasped softly. Some were angry. Some were saddened. Some simply stared at the terrible smallness of jealousy once it stands naked beneath light. Jabari looked at Amara with sorrow, not hatred. You thought revenge was making love collapse, he said. But all you truly did was reveal how lonely a heart becomes when it tries to steal what it was never given. Amara lowered her head and wept. Not graceful tears, not beautiful tears, but the kind that come when a soul finally sees the ruin it has made of itself. Then Jabari gave his judgment. No humiliation, no cruelty, no public destruction. Amara would leave the palace and live far from court, stripped of influence, accompanied only by the lessons her own choices had carved into her life. It was mercy. And mercy, to the guilty, often burns deeper than shame. That was Jabari's revenge. He did not become ugly because he had been wounded. He became unforgettable because he refused to. When the crowd began to disperse, Nia remained hidden in the shadows, unable to move. Every lie had been exposed. Every fear she had once fed now felt unbearable in her chest. She had not only doubted the man she loved, she had abandoned him in the moment he offered her his purest truth. Tears slipped down her face. She turned to leave before he could see her. But Jabari had always known how to recognize her presence, even in silence. Nia. His voice stopped her like a hand upon the heart. She turned slowly. There he stood beneath the lantern glow. No court around him now. No musicians. No audience. Only the man. Only the woman. Only the wound between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Nia fell to her knees, shaking. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I let fear wear your face. I let lies sit where trust should have lived. I broke the one place where your love had made a home." Jabari stepped closer, pain and tenderness moving together across his expression. "Stand," he said softly. "Love should never beg from the ground." She rose, tears shining on her cheeks. "I do not ask you to take me back because I deserve it," she said. "I ask only that you know. I never stopped loving you. Not for one day. Not for one breath. Even in doubt, even in distance, even in pride. I loved you." Jabari closed his eyes as if her words were both medicine and memory. "When you left," he said, "I thought music would forever remind me of loss. But even now, standing before you, I can still hear the night rain from the first time you danced." Nia wept harder. "I would spend the rest of my life earning back one drop of the trust I broke." He looked at her for a long time. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Love is not proved by never falling, Nia. It is proved by what truth is willing to rebuild." He reached for her hand, not quickly, not dramatically, gently, as if asking both her heart and his whether they still believed in tomorrow. She placed her hand in his, and in that touch, no magic erased the past. No song made the pain vanish. But something honest opened. A door. A chance. A beginning born not from innocence, but from understanding. The next moon cycle, Jabari and Nia returned to the courtyard where they had first learned each other's rhythm. No royal announcement had been made. No audience had been invited. Only a few musicians waited at a distance, playing softly for the night itself. Nia wore no heavy jewels. Jabari wore no crown. He looked at her and smiled the way he had before jealousy, before betrayal, before sorrow. But now there was something deeper in it. Wisdom. She lifted her chin. The drums began. And they danced. Slowly at first, then fully. as if every wound had become rhythm, as if every forgiven tear had become light, as if love, once broken, had returned not weaker, but truer. The people of Zamani would later say that on that night the moon shone brighter than ever before, that the wind itself carried melody, that the king no longer danced only for joy. He danced for love that had survived. He danced for truth that had returned. He danced because even betrayal, when answered with grace, could not defeat a heart that still believed in beauty. And from then on, mothers told daughters and fathers told sons, "Be careful of the smile that teaches you to doubt what has loved you sincerely. Be careful of jealousy when it dresses itself like friendship. Be careful of fear when it tries to speak louder than tenderness. But above all, when love is real, protect it before pride confuses it, because some hearts sing only once for you. And if you are blessed enough to hear that song, do not let borrowed voices make you call it false." So ends the story of Jabari, the dancing king, the woman he loved, the jealousy that almost silenced them, and the sweet revenge that was never cruelty, only truth, rising beautifully in the place where pain once stood. And if you listened closely, perhaps you heard it too. Not just a story, but a song.